I'm seeing, looks like you're really busting out tons of podcast episodes. Like, how many are you trying to do a week? Do you have a goal, a specific goal?
So I have a goal of 16 episodes by June 1st. So it's loosely weekly, but with some forgiveness built in. So it's been fun. I've gotten a lot of things recorded. I'm finding that I'm most happy with an episode when it kind of mixes a conversation or goes back and forth between interviews. So that kind of adds onto the production time. But, either way, it's been fun to just like go talk to random people. And like I ended up in the back office of the Chattanooga Cookie, which was a treat, and just all kinds of fun stuff. So
did you get some cookies?
I did.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, Michael, I don't know if you've met my wife Adrienne before. She's right there on the call.
I have not. Good to meet you.
Likewise. I've heard of you. My Leah Domino, who's in your BMA, is on my team. So I've heard about you from Harley and from Leah. So I'm glad we get the opportunity to connect. Love to see if I could ever help be an episode on your podcast. That kind of stuff is fun.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Would love it.
So, I think Kit is helping you, right?
Yes. Yeah. He's done good stuff for me.
Good. He's a nice guy.
Yeah.
Very energetic.
Mm-hmm.
So.
All right. Well, I don't want to wait too long here. I want to respect everybody's time, and we are recording it, and Kiara does send it out after the fact. So why don't we go ahead and just do quick introductions here, kind of around the room, and then we'll let our special guest, Michael Crosa, take over. He's got a presentation on doing training and processes, and I'm just really excited to hear what he's got to say. I know it's going to likely be applicable to everyone in our businesses on how we can improve things. So everybody knows me already, obviously, so maybe Hayden, you want to go next, introduce yourself, and then we'll do Adrienne and Michael.
Sure. I'm Hayden Fike. I am in business development for Workogenics. Also have a podcast called The Art of Connecting, and work in several different small businesses in Chattanooga to help small business owners answer questions and make more money.
Awesome. Adrienne?
I am Adrienne Green. I am a local realtor. I also have a podcast about long distance real estate investing. So today is just all the people who like to podcast here, an elite group. Yeah.
All right, Michael, you can introduce yourself and then take away with your presentation for us.
All right, right on. My name is Michael Crosa. I'm a consultant who helps businesses with their knowledge transfer processes, which is something that I will be presenting on here in just a minute. I use Workogenics for help with my podcast, which is unrelated to that topic, but the podcast is called My Part of Town Chattanooga. It serves as a tour by podcast of Chattanooga, with each episode featuring a different neighborhood and the community and the vibes and feelings and all of that kind of stuff that go with that neighborhood. So that's been the biggest tie-in to Workogenics in particularly. So okay, so but going back to knowledge transfer, I can get started with that. And I'm going to share my screen. Nope, not that button. All right. Here we go. So knowledge transfer is a term that I'm using specifically not for training, because it's kind of a bigger concept. And so in particular, to me, what that means is it's the skill of sharing your knowledge in such a way that it's understood and retained. And so there's a few different applications for that, but to me, that's different than training, because training is teaching somebody how to do a job, which certainly falls into that. Something to me that doesn't necessarily fall into knowledge transfer, what I'm not talking about, is sales. Because even though we talk sometimes about educating our clients or that kind of thing, we're still communicating when we do sales, but that tends to have more of an element of persuasion or something like that. And this is more about some of our internal knowledge transfer. So what we're going to do as far as kind of the scope of this presentation is, first I'm going to talk about the scope of what we're talking about when we talk about knowledge transfer, talk about 5 common mistakes. And then I've got a few helpful tools. And then if there are any questions or thoughts or things to share, things to talk through or expand on, we can do that too. So some other examples of what it is: new employee training. We already talked about that. There's also succession planning. And we can think about this as in a specific role in an organization. If you've got somebody who does a key crucial role by themselves, if they're ever going to be replaced or transition out, right, we want to make sure that we're capturing their knowledge and transferring it to the next person. Or on a larger scale, if we've got a business, say we've got a family business where the CEO is retiring and passing it on to either their offspring or somebody else, or selling a business, right? There's a lot of knowledge that comes with that process of that person has in mind that needs to go to the next owner. And then also there's an element of public speaking too. And when I say that, I'm thinking of, in particular, let's say an author goes on a book tour, right? And I said it's not sales. That might be, you might consider that some sales. But a lot of times authors are people who don't necessarily like public speaking, and yet they still need to get a message across. So they might have somebody with them who's like the host of the conversation, right? And so in that example, that person is helping with the knowledge transfer. That would be their knowledge transfer support person, and helping get that message out to the audience. So to kind of just recap all of that, what we're talking about is essentially teaching, but really making sure that we capture knowledge and transfer it in a way that's understood and actually usable. So let's dive into some common mistakes about what that is and what happens within that. So first off is underestimating your knowledge. I talk to people a lot who think like, oh, it's, what I do is, it's not that hard. It's pretty easy, but they're really underselling themselves a lot. It's easy to think that, or to kind of lose sight of what you're doing because you do it so often, right? As the person who is doing it day in and day out, or think that things don't need to be written down. When I first started with Workergenics, I think I told Harley this, is I started thinking, I was like, okay, what am I going to have my VP do? And I started writing down a list, and all of a sudden the list got really long. And I was like, wow, I didn't realize that it didn't even occur to me that I had all of this stuff that I'd expected myself to do. And so in that example, I had underestimated my own knowledge and expectations. So secondly is kind of the opposite, is overestimating your ability to communicate it. I think a lot of times we assume that like, oh, there's a new employee, we can just, we just have them on the job, but just if you have any questions, let me know. And we don't realize that that's actually can be really unhelpful and really off-putting. A favorite story that I like to tell is there was an instance where I started a new job, and the particular building that we were in, most of the people were all along one hallway. There was a second really long hallway. It's kind of an old, nasty building. And my first day, I was like trying to find the refrigerator and just, put my lunch in. And I asked the guy who I was working with or working next to, so where's the refrigerator? He says, down the hall. Okay, so I go down the hall and I'm looking, I don't see a break room. Maybe I missed it. So I come back later and I'm like, hey man, you said it was down the hall. Like is it in a particular room? And he said, oh, the hall that looks like The Shining. It's just down there. Just keep looking. And now I'm a grown man, right? I'm not afraid of a hallway, but that kind of a messaging can be really off-putting, and it really did kind of off-put. It's like, man, just show me where the fridge is. Come on. And so like knowing that experience was so impactful on me over something trivial, if we think about when we're communicating things that are important and are actually related to the work, it's really easy to accidentally either off-put or miscommunicate or something like that if we're not planning ahead. neglecting different learning styles. Everyone learns differently. There's visual learners, audio learners, kinetic learners. There's combinations of all of those. People who are in training often tend to just assume that everybody learns the same way that they do. So if I'm somebody who learns by doing, it's really easy to assume that everybody else is going to be cool to learn on the job. Or if I like to hear things, it's really easy to think that, oh, I'll just give a presentation, I'll give a Zoom, I'll do something like that, and that'll be it. That'll be fine. Personally, I really struggle with Zoom trainings, really, 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 really. And here I am giving one. But you know, if this is the only thing that we're relying on, then we're missing some things. And so, of course, matching the scope of your organization, or you know, just your abilities, doing what you can to mix learning styles. Like maybe you have some opportunities where people can listen and then try it, or listen and then watch a video, or watch a video and then try it, right? If we mix our modalities for our employee training, then we can really increase the amount of retention and comprehension and make sure that we're getting everybody in the room. Also, training for details without a specific plan is kind of what I was hitting earlier about overestimating. So the phrase "can't see the forest for the trees" is what comes to mind here. A lot of times I find that when people are training their employees, they start with just sort of stream of consciousness of like, okay, so you walk up to the cash register, and if they give you a 20, here's how you make change. And then if you do this, and then right. And we're talking about all the details, and maybe we even get caught up on exceptions to rules and all this kind of stuff, but we haven't even talked about what we want our customers to experience when they walk in the store, right? And if we start with some of these higher level philosophies, our broader training, here's what the average customer experience is going to look like from when they walk in to when they leave, right? If we start there, then the details have a place to fit. And when your employee is in a situation in which there's no script for, that they know how to estimate it, they know how to do things, because we know how this fits within the bigger picture. When I'm doing training manuals with companies, one of the first steps that I always do is build in life cycle of a, whatever it is. So for example, I'm working with an insurance adjuster agency. So one of the first things that I'm putting into their training manual is life cycle of an insurance claim. So we're starting from the damage happens, they call the insurance, the adjuster comes out, whatever the different pieces are. And that way that person understands, like, okay, this is how I fit into the bigger picture. So now everything has a place to go. I know how to fit everything else in. And then finally, nothing is written down. Especially the smaller businesses of 2 and 3 people, those family businesses, it's totally okay to be working out of your head. Things are changing so often, there's not that many people to communicate with, so it totally makes sense to get started that way. But once we get to the point of bringing on new people or trying to transfer that business or something like that, then if we've gone too long without writing anything down, there's a lot of very valuable knowledge that is just in the ether. So I don't think I need to expand anymore necessarily on the need to write things down, but I will anyway, in just a little bit under a helpful tool. So some of the things that I find myself referring or suggesting to people the most often are some of the things I put in the helpful tools section. Number 1, signposting your presentation. So for example, you notice here, when I started the presentation, I told you 3 main topics that I was going to hit. And I made a visual graphic to show, as we're going along the presentation, where we are in the presentation. So that helps build that bigger picture. And then it helps us, as we're going along, figure out, how does this information fit in? Is Michael just sort of stream of consciousness, whatever, about 5 mistakes? Is there a bigger plan? How does this fit? So that's something that I like to use in my presentations. And you can even be very blunt about how you're signposting. So if you're in a presentation, it's totally okay to just stop and say, okay, now I'm going to talk about 5 common mistakes. A lot of times people feel like that might be cheesy or forced or whatever, but totally not. The audience hears it and accepts it, and then they know how to interpret and how to fit everything else in later. Separating challenge and support. And so this is a concept that comes from my work as a higher education administrator, and particularly working with behavioral interventions and things like that. So I'm going to use the example of a professor, but I think it'll obviously tie into business as well. So a lot of times when professors are working with students who might be having some kind of life challenges, things, or struggling with a concept or something like that, there's a tendency to think very linearly about how you're working with that student and how that connects to the grade. So maybe I'll be more lenient on how I grade this paper so that you get a better grade or something like that. And what I like to encourage folks is to think about that as two different things. Think about the challenge over here, and the challenge is I'm challenging you to write a paper of this quality. I'm supporting you in reaching that challenge. I can play with these variables independently. If I lessen the challenge, if I say I'll give you, I'll grade more leniently, I'll do something like that, we may not be helping with the support. It may get us through that particular challenge, but as we continue, then we're not necessarily addressing the problem. It also might not address the problem at all. That might not be helpful to that person in that moment. On the other hand, with support, I can say, okay, I can recognize that there's some additional need here. I'm going to sit down with this person. We're going to talk through these concepts. We're going to do some more examples. I'm going to provide some more support, but I'm not going to adjust the challenge. And I'm not going to assume that this person is asking me to adjust the challenge. I think that's another misconception that we often have. So, of course, when it comes to employee training, we have these expectations, right? We have things that we need our employees to do. We need them to interact with customers a certain way or reach certain goals. And so we can think about how we're supporting them as being a completely different variable. And then I want to tell you about my friend Trainual. So Trainual is a software training manual is the pun there. This is a software, Sean. I'll show a couple screenshots here in a minute. That's designed to build your training manual. It works across industries, but it works especially well in places where there's repeatable tasks. And so kind of the examples that I like to give, of course, there's plenty of examples, but could work really well for a laundry service, right? Because the work tends to be very repeated. Laundry comes in, wash, fold, laundry goes out. It might be less helpful for companies like creative companies, so like a graphic design or marketing firm. The point is to be different every time, right? So there could still be some carryover as far as like expense reports. Everybody's got expense reports as repeated. How do you get something reimbursed? How do you use the software? Right, some of that can be basics, but particularly those service industry fields is where I find this most helpful. I think it's really helpful, and so I've got a discount code for anybody who wants to use it. 10% off your first month with just my last name. So let me show a couple examples. Well, I think this is just the one example. So this is what you would see if you log in on a desktop. There's also an app version itself. So we've got things organized on this side by company. This is going to be the information about your backstory, your values, your mission, vision, all that kind of stuff. People, self-explanatory. It also has a feature to organize people by roles, which we'll come back to in a sec. Policies tends to be, policies, time off, benefits, whatever, that kind of thing. And then processes, that's where we get real juicy with the meat of what we're doing. And so what we're looking at here are subjects, employee safety, and those get broken down into two different levels. The smallest level being steps, so that as you're going through, it's really step by step. It's more intuitive to follow than a Google Doc or something like that, where it's really easy for the writer to kind of go off on a tangent and not, kind of get lost in the weeds. And then as the employer, you have the opportunity to track how far your employees are getting. Are people done? Do they, whatever. And then with the roles, the different roles that I talked about earlier, you can assign things to different people. So I'm going to go back to that insurance adjuster. agency example, we can identify that person A is a property adjuster, person B is a liability adjuster, person C does both, and person D works the back office. And so I can come up with their specific roles. There might be some adjuster topics that are applicable to both adjusters, property or liability. Some might be one to the other. And then there's going to be a lot that's specific to that office manager. Then as my company grows and expands, and I have 5 new property adjusters, I don't even have to do anything. Everything's already written. Everything's already planned out. I can just tag them as those property adjusters. All the information gets their way, and then I can see later what they've done. It also gives people a reference material so that they stop calling you and asking, how do I do this basic task that has already been explained and written down. So anyway, that's Trainual. Again, discount code is just my last name. Yeah, so that's that. And I'm also happy to, going back to Trainual, if anybody is interested and wants to learn more, I can do a little bit more of a detailed one-on-one demo on that. So yeah, any questions or thoughts about what we've covered
I'd like
so far?
to ask, and maybe you can just kind of briefly touch on, like, how did you come to like getting into this, like this whole industry or business model of like starting to use Trainual and helping other businesses create their processes and systems? How did that come about?
Yeah. Thank you for asking that. So my career in the past has been in university administration, and specifically working with students on behavioral issues. So I've done student conduct or student misconduct, as it were, investigated sexual misconduct on campuses, done other policy adjudications, as a crisis case manager for students. So I've done a lot of working with adults on behavioral knowledge. And with that comes a lot of university policy and state, federal policy and things like that. And a lot of that is fairly specific to education, but the overall philosophy of figuring out how to apply this black and white text to this human being that's in front of me and vice versa, that's something that I've just always had a passion for and just experiencing. And so thinking about what I can offer to the business world as a independent, what I came up with was this concept of knowledge transfer. And I mean, knowledge transfer is a concept that exists. That part isn't me specifically, but that's how I ended up on this as a business model. And yeah, because I have been in positions where the training was really off-putting. And I've heard a lot of other people talk about that too, of like, man, the job seemed cool, but like the first day was terrible. Or HR people who can't retain people past training, right? There's a need for this. And so that's why I'm here to offer the service to folks.
So for people that are, hearing the call or are going to watch this later, and they have their businesses and they all have their unique processes, their unique knowledge and challenges, and maybe they don't have any kind of written process, like you had mentioned, give an example of like, what would you say to them is like the easiest way to just get started? Like, should they just jump right into Trainual? Should they try to just get something written out on like a Google Doc first? How do you typically kind of mentor people on just getting started?
Sure. Well, I guess now is as good a time as any just to say like, hey, give me a call.
Yeah.
So that's for sure. And I can share the Trainual link. I imagine, when you send this out, we can include that too. Something that I offer as kind of a starting point is just to interview somebody about their business, and then I can create an outline. Because of course, hey, the whole reason that stuff hasn't been written down is because we don't have time, right? If we had the time, we probably would have. And as somebody who knows nothing about your business and possibly even nothing about your industry, that can be an asset, because I will ask the dumb questions and the silly questions that you may not even realize a new person may not know. And so when I provide this outline within Trainual, we'll do the interview. I'll make the Trainual. I'll sit down and show it to you. Here's the outline of what I've got. Does this look about right? Do we, is there any major things that have been missed? And then if you'd like to continue with me, I can continue to fill out in the details and do really step by step, or maybe you've got somebody that you can assign that task from there on out. So that's my plug, and would love to work with folks on next steps.
Can you share kind of what it looks like for maybe, I don't know if you have like a typical client as far as like timeline of getting started with you, and like what kind of like packages and pricing you typically offer, if you have like pre-built packages, or is it like custom design for each business needs?
Tends to be custom design, honestly, just because every business need is so different. But I can be transparent with folks when we meet and kind of consult about what that would look like. That outlining package, like I said, I think is a great place to start, just to get a large scope and just get a feel for things and see where things are. And then after that, we can either do an hourly rate, or if there is some other need that arises, we can figure something out as well.
And then one last question for me, and then I'll give other people a chance. I've been like kind of hogging all the questions. Just had some good stuff from Michael here. Do you have like an example that you would be able to share, like a client that you've helped recently, just kind of help people like get the gears turning, and whether it's themselves or like other people they know that they could help refer and pass your way? Like, could you share like a kind of a success story or example like that?
Yeah. Well, I can talk about that. Go into detail a little bit about the insurance adjuster company, because I think that's a good example. And so, independent insurance adjusters, just in case anybody isn't familiar, if an insurance company has a claim out of state or somewhere else, or just whatever, they might call an independent insurance adjuster. So they might get a call from Geico, they might get a call from whoever, right? And they'll go out and they'll handle the claim. So in this case, it is a family business that's been rocking for like 30 years or something like that. And the owner is planning on transitioning the business to a child. And so much of that business has been run up here, and maybe there's a hiring agreement with this person about, oh, we'll give you 20% or whatever, but over here it's an hourly rate, and here, right, there's so many things like that are going on that the owner doesn't even realize isn't written down anywhere, or doesn't realize doesn't come intuitively to somebody else. There's a lot of organizations that they have memberships to that list isn't anywhere, or even what that is. So by interviewing the people who are involved with this business, what I've been able to do is create, and with my my Workogenics VP, we've done this together, is build out resources for this business. And so for example, with the organization memberships, that seems like kind of a trivial topic, right? But really, if you have a new person coming in, it might be really helpful for them to even know, oh, there's a Windstorm independent, I forget the exact name of it, but like, oh, there's a whole organization for that, and we have a membership, or there's something specifically for that, right? And so being able to put all of that down in one place and together and in a useful format, it's exciting. And being able to go in as the outsider and ask them these dumb questions. And I'll even tell them ahead of time, I'm not gonna hold back. I'm not going to pretend like I know what you're talking about. I'm not going to smile and nod, because that would be a disservice. So I'm going to ask these questions, and then I'm going to make sure that they're reflected in your manual, in your playbook. So that's been pretty exciting to me so far.
So it sounds like if anybody knows of a business that maybe this is going to be transferred, like passed down to heirs, or even sold, I imagine like if you can put in your business listing that when you're starting to market it for sale, if you're trying to get an exit strategy, hey, we've got every process completely documented using this great software and using Michael's service, that's going to add a huge amount of value to an end buyer, because then it's like really turns this business effectively into like a turnkey moneymaker for somebody. So
absolutely. I mean, how much of a loss would it be if you didn't have that?
Right.
You walked into your new printing business with no idea how to run the screen printer, right? No idea where your client list is.
Anybody else have more questions for Michael? Awesome. All right. Well, Michael, I really appreciate you sharing your knowledge with us here this afternoon.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
to be a part of Workogenics.
So I just had a couple of small things I wanted to share with everybody. mastermind, we've got one of our clients. She's not here today. She told me recently about this service called privacy.com. And what it allows you to do is create virtual cards and accounts from your like credit cards and other kind of financial accounts that then you can use to have like spending limits and ensure your actual cards and accounts are kept private from third parties. Like let's say you're trying to buy something from a vendor, the website doesn't look quite right, but they've got a great deal and you want to make that purchase there, you can go and use this privacy.com service to create like a one-time virtual card that you can use there. And that way, if there is an issue, your actual card is not compromised. You don't have to go through that messy process of going, getting the card reissued and updating your card everywhere you use it. It's also helpful if some people are a little uncomfortable sharing their credit card with their virtual professional to start making purchases on their behalf. Go ahead and make a privacy.com card and give that information to the virtual professional. Then they can use that to do purchasing for you and free up that process from your daily life. So I'm going to go ahead and just put that link here in the chat. And so this is like a referral link. It's from one of our clients that when she passed it to me, I believe that gives some kind of discount on the service if you end up signing up with it. And then beyond that, just wanted to share that our next month's mastermind, we're going to have another special speaker, and I'm pulling that up here on my calendar, trying to pull this up here. We are going to have a presentation on doing like hyper local search engine optimization. So definitely want to get that on your calendar. Make sure you join us for that. Does anybody else that's on the call have anything they'd like to share, or questions or wins they've had recently they'd like to share with the group? Going once, twice. All right. Well, we'll respect everybody's time here and go ahead and wrap this up. I really appreciate everybody joining us today. Hayden, did you have something?
Oh, no, I was just going to say thank you to Michael and hope everybody has a great day.
Absolutely.
You too. Thanks for having me.
All right. We'll see everyone soon. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.